It is a new economy in the making within the Eko Atlantic City, and this will further reposition Lagos in its bid to become the leading and the preferred mega city within the continent of Africa. An engineering challenge for us to protect our land from the sea, and in doing so create something new also out of this, a new city that represents our current outlook to life, the kind of life we want to live, the kind of city-state that we want, and also the kind of human developmental index we want to see in our people, the opportunities, a changed life, a total remake of the people and the state of Lagos.
But the problem we have now is about this dredging. The dredge here is mainly on the causes. Because I'm over 60 years in this village, something like this has not been happening.
So who are those dredging the sand?
Okay, they dredge the sand from Lekki Beach, the Bar Beach. That is the sand. They use that sand to fill that place up.
Where did they dredge the sand from?
They dredge from here. They go like this. When the ship loaded finish, they will go back and offload it
To Bar Beach.
to the Bar Beach.
Well, I think that any project which will have human habitation, which will affect people, will affect the environment, has to be carefully thought through. It has to undergo an environmental impact assessment, which is under the laws of Nigeria. And I think that it has to be also participatory, that people who live around the area should know exactly what is going on. I'm not just condemning the project offhand, but I'm just saying that based on what we know about climate change and sea level rise, and I think any project on the waterfront has to be seriously considered for impacts that it may have, negative. There could be a few positive impacts. But I think that projects like that should not be driven by the business community. It must be driven by common sense and the results of science.
If we are not very careful, all the things we are trying to do, we may end up losing a lot of the infrastructure and the natural environment that we are to protect, all of which will eventually lead to some socio-economic changes and losses, which can create some confusion among the people. The basic response of federal government, therefore, will be to try to reduce the risk. If we do not do that, which will be to adjust and to adapt properly, we may end up, because what the Eko Atlantic is saying is that we lost land due to coastal erosion. We are trying to adapt back to make sure that that land we are able to use. But the structure we are going to put in, if care is not taken, it can even lead to more negative things rather than developing the place. And that's what is called maladaptation. You can introduce something in an attempt to adapt that can create more problem than what you are trying to adapt to. And therefore, there's a need that we must have a very good analysis of the net sea level rise risk. What are the ecological risks? What are even the political risks?
Things that Nigeria could do or the government of Lagos State could do before the sort of project which I've seen in a mock-up, just in drawings and computer simulations and all that. If they are going to go through with it and they're intent on doing it, then they must have done a feasibility study in which they think it will be profitable. But things that are financially profitable are not always environmentally sensible, and this is the concern that I have personally as a marine scientist, and I think other people in the community have as well, that here we are talking about sea level rise, what could happen to people. We've seen an upsurge in disasters on coastal zones in the last 10 years, the tsunami in Southeast Asia, 1,000 people died in the Philippines just last month, floods in New Orleans and so on. So why are we trying to do something which will eventually, maybe, be destroyed? And mind you, what happens in environmental management is that where you have doubts, then the precautionary principle must apply. That you say, because of that principle, let us not do it. It's not a question of, after 10 years, you find that, oh, mistakes have been made, people's lives are at risk, then abandon ship and jump somewhere. It doesn't happen like that with human habitation.
Engineering is the basic thing they are doing, the seawall, the ground, the barrier, everything. And that's one of the dangers. I'm sorry, I don't hate engineers, but I always tell them that they don't look at issues from multidisciplinary approach. I create a barrier and it will stop it. This is the height of the wave, this is the frequency of the wave, this is the mass of the water, and this is the energy that will hit the wall. If the mass of the wall is greater than the mass that will hit the wall will stand. We are proposing that whatever we are going to do, there must be a model that will show the predicted sea level changes in a range of scenarios, the time series, incremental change, what are the shear events, the frequency. We must have a model that will form those changes that will take place. They must provide an understanding of the associated impacts on existing coastal systems, as well as on the infrastructure and property of the people. We must be able to have good guidelines and implications to future coastal development, which must be included in the Lagos Coastal Development Guidelines.
It's a very wide thing. You can't have a few sentences of advice. The advice I have is that make sure you study things very well. Make sure you fund research. Make sure you consult people. That's the advice I have. The people in government are educated people, better educated maybe than myself, I don't know. But the point is that there has to be consultation, it has to be participatory, it has to be brought to public debate. We live in a democracy. This is not a military regime where you have something on paper and then you just go with soldiers or with a task force and carry it out. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, as a scientist, I know that it's obvious you have some reservation, and I know that you've done some research and stuff.
Yeah.
Could you just let us through into some of the things that are really bothering you now?
Okay, what bothers me is that they say 1 meter of sea level rise is equivalent to 38 centimeters of displacement of coastal shoreline. So if we go according to that, it means that in about 100 years' time, we would have had that should happen every 10 years, about 400 meters of shoreline gone in Lagos. Therefore, the shoreline that we're seeing here on Victoria Beach, on Bar Beach, will be, by my calculation, maybe around St. Saviour's Cathedral, around State House, around Onikon. Is that the sort of thing that you know about and you still want to build a barrier? They say, oh, the sea level rise, Eko Atlantic City is going to stop the waves. What about the next beach? You see, when you stop waves on one area, the waves tend to divert and start eating up the next beach. So what is going to happen to, let's say, Lekki? If there's a movement of sand, you can't just build skyscrapers from Badagry to Calabar, to block the waves from, attacking the beach in Nigeria. So these are the considerations that I'm saying. One problem is going to lead to another because they say climate change is a threat multiplier. It's going to remain that way, and I think that they should not just see this as anarchy or aimless criticism. Well, the thing I think that should be done now is to actually, in a civilized manner, join in this sort of debate. I think the press in Nigeria, both the electronic press and the published media, have been very, very good at environmental advocacy. And I think that it should be a political issue as well. Somebody should call for a debate in the Lagos State House of Assembly and that sort of thing to revisit what is being done along the shoreline. It's not enough for the state to have the published, which is a good thing, State of the Environment 2010, or they have a high-profile symposium every year in which they invite people. It's opened by the governor of the state, and everybody goes away. The point is, what are the findings of these symposia and seminars? What are the action points from them? Like we're talking now, I've been around so many seminars for the past 20 years that I've been living around Lagos, and I worked in the Institute for Oceanography. What I always find is, what is the action point? And if you've taken any action, has there been something like an appraisal? Has there been monitoring? Has it been good? What are the impacts? But we talk at times and we go away, and the government or governments in Nigeria usually take people for granted. Okay, they've talked and we've heard them. Now let's go back to the business people and continue what we're doing. That shouldn't be the case, because a lot of businesses, once they make their profits, they move away, maybe go to another country, maybe go to another part of the country. The disaster you have there, that's your own problem. Then they vote another money to go and repair the disaster that is done. Why not forestall disaster? Why not have a package, a disaster risk reduction package ready? I mean, you look at this, talk about these tall buildings. What's going to happen if there's a disaster? And Lagos has had a very bad history of fires in tall buildings. The Independence Building went, Necom House went, NCR House went. So now you want to have a whole city full of skyscrapers. What kind of energy are you going to use there? Is it going to be with generators and so on? These things, in a country that is talking about environmentally friendly development and zero carbon, it doesn't look to me as if what is planned in Lagos is in line, in keeping with energy efficiency. I think it's just the other way.
Reporting politics is not as straightforward as you might imagine. Most times, what is may not just be as it appears. More like the case of the more you look, the less you see. The more you try to understand the situation, the more confusing it gets. What we do in politics today, dissect the scenario, no matter how difficult, because ultimately, our job is to help you make sense of it all.
We'd love to hear from you. Do you have a comment or questions? Do send them to us by email on file@channelstv.com.